In those days, Julia was flat-chested and leggy, all spidery limbs and neck, bodiless. When I first met her in the station yard when she drove me home through the twilight, that high summer of 1923, she was just 18 and fresh from her first London season. Some said it was the most brilliant season since the war, that things were getting into their stride again. Julia was at the centre of it. There were then remaining perhaps half a dozen London houses which could be called historic. Marchmain House in St. James's was one of them, and the ball given for Julia was by all accounts a splendid spectacle, the last of its kind given there. Wherever she went, she brought a moment of joy such as strikes deep to the heart on the river's bank when the kingfisher suddenly flares across the water. This was the creature, neither child nor woman, that drove me through the dusk that summer evening, untroubled by love, taken aback by the power of her own beauty, hesitating on the cool edge of life. She had no interest in me that evening. She lived apart in a little world within a world, a little problem troubling her mind. She was wondering dispassionately and leagues distant from reality whom she should marry. To be married soon and splendidly was the aim of all her friends. She outshone all the girls of her age, but she knew that, in that world within a world, there were grave disabilities from which she suffered. There was the scandal of her father, that inherited stain that seemed deepened by something in her own way of life, waywardness and wilfulness. And there was a shadow on her that unfitted her for the highest honours, her religion. If she apostatized now, having been brought up in the church, she would go to hell, while Protestant girls could marry eldest sons, live at peace with their world, and get to heaven before her. There could be no eldest son for her. There were the Catholics themselves, but of the dozen or so rich and noble Catholic families, none at that time had an heir of the right age. What was there left? There must, she thought, be a number of people outside her own world who were qualified to be drawn into it. The shame was that she must seek them. Not for her the cruel, delicate luxury of choice, the indolent cat-and-mouse pastimes of the hearthrug. She must hunt in the forest. She had made a picture of the kind of man who would do. He was an English diplomat with a great career before him. While professing mild agnosticism, he was agreeable to having his children brought up Catholic. He did not demand, however, as a Catholic husband might, yearly pregnancies. Julia had given a name to her diplomat. She called him Eustace, and from that moment he became a figure of fun to her, so that when at last such a man did fall in love with her, she sent him away, for by then she had met Rex Mottram. Rex's age was in his favour. Julia recognised the unmistakable chic, the flavour of Max and the Prince of Wales, the second Magnum and the fourth cigar, of the chauffeur kept waiting hour after hour without compunction, which her friends would envy. His social position had an air of mystery, even of crime. People said Rex went about armed. He had stepped straight from the underworld into the world of Brenda Champion. When Julia went to stay with her aunt, Lady Roscommon, at Cap Ferrat, Rex and Brenda Champion were staying at the next villa. Living so close, the parties mingled, and at once Rex began warily to pay his court. All that summer he had been feeling restless. Mrs. Champion had proved a dead end. Rex demanded a wider horizon. He wanted to consolidate his gains. It was time he married, and Julia was by all accounts top debutante. A suitable prize. With Mrs. Champion's cold eyes watching him behind her sunglasses, Rex was never entirely alone with Julia at Cap Ferrat, but he saw to it that she was included in most things they did, enough to make Lady Roscommon write to Lady Marchmain and Mrs. Champion move him, sooner than they had planned, to Antibes. "Aunt Fanny tells me you made great friends with Mr. Mottram," said Julia's mother when they next met. I'm sure he can't be very nice." "I don't think he is," said Julia. "I don't know that I like nice people."